Okay, so I'm gonna just describe. So this was about 2013 when I'm in Kauai. Same with my grandparents, or with my grandma and grandpa, my dad's mom and dad. And as I said, my grandpa had become a metapsychiatrist when he was like 40 years old. Before that, he was just a minister. And but he became an existential metapsychiatrist. And so I'm living with him. And as I said, at that time, I was very much a leftist, and I was kind of anti-white, very much just like a liberal Democrat, but just like very leftist and really pro people of color, anti-white. So at that time, I'll just kind of give some examples of what I wrote on INTP Central then. So I started writing on INTP Central, and I started explaining some of the theories I discovered about the Bible. And kind of my thesis was that Jesus was a trickster, or basically it was just Christianity was just a trick to destroy the Roman Empire and save the Jews. And I looked at it kind of in a Darwinian perspective. And the reason I want to do that was because a lot of times I would hear like white people be like, oh, Jews are bad, or, people of color are bad. But as a leftist liberal, I wanted to invert that and completely overturn that and create a big paradigm shift and make the Jews the good guys of the Bible. And like I said, the way I did that was the Jews, a lot of times in the Bible, they don't believe, right? But then they end up being saved. But the Gentiles believe, like the Pharaoh, he believes, but then he ends up being killed. And my thesis was like, basically, yeah, that's what the Bible is trying to indicate, that not believing can be good, because then you break free of conformity and then you can expand your awareness and become more open to the flow. And so I was like, the good is bad and the bad is good, right? That's the way I was trying to look at it. And because I had that anti-white leaning, and I wanted to make, because I knew that black people or people of color were considered more sexual, more criminal, more more sinful, right? And I wanted to make that good. I wanted to make being sinful good, right? Because I'm like, well, it's closer to the flow, because conformity is not the flow. And the way I did that in terms of the Bible was I tried to describe that this story of Jesus was just a metaphor of the destruction of the Roman Empire. And that's a theory that I discovered when I was on Kauai that I really solidified. So I started writing it on INTP Central. And this is kind of the gist of it. But like, you look at the story of Joseph. Joseph is sold by his 12 brothers to Egypt. And the 12 brothers represent the 12 tribes of Israel. Joseph has a kind of a death and resurrection where he's killed by his brothers fakely. And they show him, they sell him to slaves, and they show their dad his blood-covered coat. But they dip the blood or they dip the coat in like goat blood or something. So it made it seem like he was dead. So there was kind of a death. And then later he'll come back to life. There'll be a resurrection. And his dad will be like, my son was dead, but now he's alive. And I was like, that's the same thing as Jesus. And then, and then Joseph becomes the second in command in Egypt. He becomes a god, and they worship him. And I was like, the same thing happened in Rome. The Jews sell him, the 12 disciples, like the 12 brothers, sell him to the Romans, and then he becomes their god. And then what happens to Egypt? Egypt's destroyed. And what happens to the Roman Empire? It's destroyed. And who saved? The Israelites. And who saved in the terms of the story of Jesus? The Jews are saved by it, by converting the Romans to Christianity, which was a Jewish religion, essentially, that told them to take care of the Jews. And even Paul was like, yes, you Gentiles will be grafted into Israel, but you can be grafted out. But all Israel will be saved. So to me, it just seemed like a trick. Like, he was just trying to convert them to an anti-Roman religion in order to destroy Rome and save the Jews. And he was like, don't convert the Jews. Let them be, Jesus said salvation comes from the Jews. Like, just let them be, and you guys just become Christians. And I was like, yeah, it was just a trick. And he said, and while you become Christians, give us material blessings. I mean, while we give you the spiritual blessings. And I was like, yeah, it was a trick. And the same thing happened when the Israelites destroyed Egypt. The Egyptians give them their gold because they were afraid of them. And I was like, yeah, and that's the same story, where they make the blood of the lamb so that all the Egyptians are killed, but not the Israelites. And I thought, yeah, that was the blood of Jesus. Jesus represents a lamb that killed all the Romans and saved the Jews. And even the high priest says, yeah, we have to sell Jesus to the Romans in order for us to be saved, so he can be sacrificed and we can be saved. And I was like, yeah, that's the story of the Exodus. And then I made the big discoveries where I was looking through the Bible, and I said, okay, yes, the New Testament is an allegorical parallel of the Old Testament of the Exodus of Egypt. And the way that I did that was, I said, I went to a Seventh-day Adventist church, and they described how when Jesus crosses a sea, he then multiplies bread, just like how the God of Israel crosses the sea and brings down manna from heaven. And then what happens when the God of Israel crosses the sea and brings down manna from heaven is the Egyptian army is swallowed and they're destroyed. And then I noticed that after Jesus crosses the sea, he heals Legion, and the demons go into the pigs, and then the demons inside Legion go into pigs, and then they're swallowed by the water. So I didn't understand what that meant. So I looked it up, and then somebody had the idea that maybe it was just like on a Christian forum I was looking at. And he was like, it's possible that Legion represents the Roman legions. And I thought, okay, well, Jesus crosses the sea and multiplies bread and then kills the Roman, he crosses the sea, then kills the Roman legions and then multiplies bread. Just like how the God of Israel crosses the sea, then destroys the Egyptian army and then brings down manna from heaven, multiplies bread. So I was like, okay, yes, this story of the New Testament is an allegory of the exodus of the Jews from the Roman Empire. And why did I want to believe this too? I really do believe I discovered that, but I was like, yeah, so actually the Jews are the good guys, because I want to invert everything. And I was very liberal, and I was thinking of the Jews as more people of color. And so I was like, yeah, the Jews are the good guys. And it was just a trick, you white people who adopted Christianity, because I wanted to destroy Christianity, because I saw Christianity as white supremacist and maintaining stratification and maintaining white supremacy by, I felt like Christians uphold morality, and morality upholds the status quo, like do not steal, do not kill and stuff. And that justifies putting a lot of black people in prison, people in color in prison. And I was anti-prison, I was anti-white. I was very much of a leftist, and I wanted race mixing. So I was like, yeah, this is an allegory of the Exodus from Egypt, the New Testament. But this time Jesus is in the place of God. So it's like he's a son of God, and he's a reflection of his father. And you see that in like Hindu mythology, where the sons of the gods will be like reflections of their fathers, right? So I was like, yeah, this is what the story is about. And then Jesus crosses another river, and then he heals a Canaanite woman, and then he multiplies bread again. And I was like, yeah, that's an allegory of when the Israelites cross another river, and then they heal Rahab, the Canaanite woman, they save her, and then they destroy the Canaanite city. And I thought and then I studied from Finkelstein that he didn't believe that the Jews really came from Egypt, but he thought that they made that up, and really they were just Canaanite serfs who had basically Marxist revolutions. And I was like, see, the Bible is Marxist. And really, the story of Jesus is just a parallel of that Marxist revolution that happened in the Old Testament. And really, the Bible is Marxist. Because why did I want to believe that? Because I felt like white supremacists were nationalists, and they fought and they were more religious. And I wanted to destroy religion and destroy nationalism, and I was a communist Marxist. So I was really anti-white. And that was kind of the thesis that I proclaimed. And then I was telling everybody on INTP Central, I was like, see, Jesus heals a Roman commander, and then he destroys the Roman legions. And I was like, that's because when you help your enemy, he double crossed and then he destroyed them. So loving your enemy destroys them. And this is all just a trick. It was all just a Darwinian trick to save the Jews. The New Testament is just an allegory to save the Jews and destroy the Romans, who I saw as like the white people. But I didn't explicitly say to them that it was the white people that were the problem, right? But that was the way that I was looking at things, and I was saying, I was like, basically all religion is just genetic Darwinism. If you look at Hindu religion, if you look at religion everywhere, if for the Hindus it was just the darker skinned Dravidians versus the lighter skinned Aryans, who they made in their mythology the demigods versus the demons, and that was just Darwinism. Their mythology is just Darwinism. And same thing with the mythology of the Jews, and same thing with all mythologies. It's all just based around Darwinism and the desire to protect and preserve their tribal genes. So I was like, really, the only thing that we can mitigate this and create peace is if we create a forecast society based around the temperaments, where we race mix everybody and dissolve all ethnicities, and then we can finally have peace. Because I said, the only reason why different groups develop different religions and separate is because they want to maintain their ethnic genes. And through religions fulfill that purpose. And adopting different belief systems fulfill that purpose, because then you can justify separation and segregation. But I was like, the only thing that can solve this problem is this race mixing forecast society. So that was what I proposed on INTP Central. And so I was very much a leftist, anti-white, right? But this is the problem. So I was writing this stuff on my Facebook too. But then what happened was I wanted my basketball videos of when I was younger, because I really wanted to study how I was moving when I was younger. I wanted to study the swag flow, and I wanted to fix my shot. And I had studied how if you duplicate what you see, then you can fix it. And the shoot away routine really destroyed my muscle memory, destroyed my shot, and really it did help me. But like I said, it took till 2019 for me to really start to really fix it, because I started really studying exactly what I was doing, how I was moving in the shots, jumping into it and everything, and I really started fixing it. So, but the problem was, as I said, my mom was deleting all of my posts. And so all my posts were being deleted, or they're being hidden, and I didn't know that. So I had asked one of my friends, Ed, for basketball videos of when I was younger, and he got me some basketball videos. But then this is where things really started to get out of control, and I'll get to that in a minute.